All right. Rob, we start this off with the third step prayer. Let's do that.
On page 63 of your big book, everybody, my name's Rob K. I'm a recovered alcoholic. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. I'm Leo, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. We are in To Wives is the chapter, and the page that we're on is 111. What I'm going to ask Rob to do is move up one paragraph as to where we were. It's really towards the top there. It's not the first paragraph, but the second one. Let's go ahead and start at the very top of the page.
You got it, Leo. Page 111, everybody. The first principle of success is that you should never be angry. Even though your husband becomes unbearable and you have to leave him temporarily, you should, if you can, go without rancor. Patience and good temper are most necessary. Our next thought is that you should never tell him what he must do about his drinking. If he gets the idea that you are a nag or a killjoy, your chance of accomplishing anything useful may be zero. He will use that as an excuse to drink more. He will tell you he is misunderstood. This may lead to lonely evenings for you. He may seek someone else to console him, not always another man.
Well, it's a couple of thoughts here real quick. One is that you're quite the strong person if you're able to not get upset during a time of someone else drinking and causing the problems that they normally cause. And if you're at a point where you're going to need to leave and separate for a period of time, it's also very difficult, I would say, to not let your emotions get the best of you. If you're able, you're an incredibly strong person, and I believe that with somebody that's got that ability, they're probably going to come to a much better conclusion no matter what the situation. On top of that, nobody likes to be told what to do. It's pretty much just a standard, life's kind of thing where if you're getting on to somebody about their drinking, they're liable to do the heck it's and where I'll show you, and I can, and at the end of it all, drinking more, then they turn around and go, well, you made me do it, kind of thing. So again, it's just going to complicate matters. They're not going to necessarily want to listen to it, and they'll turn around and put it back in your lap. And the bottom line is that it doesn't get you anywhere other than a worsening situation. Rob?
Yeah, so true, Leo. I was in a meeting earlier this week, and we were going through this part, and one gentleman came on to the meeting, and he said, if people told him not to do something, just to spite them, he would drink more. So frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices, because these people don't think they have a problem, and so they're not going to do anything about it. So keep that in mind. Be determined that your husband's drinking is not going to spoil your relations with your children or your friends. They need your companionship and your help. It is possible to have a full and useful life though your husband continues to drink. We know women who are unafraid, even happy under these conditions. Do not set your heart on reforming your husband. You may be unable to do so, no matter how hard you try.
The situation here is that you really do want to focus, on the things that are good, the things that are right, and that's certainly includes children, and your friends. The point being is that this not setting your heart on reforming your husband. You may be unable to do so no matter how hard you try. It's just going to end up frustrating you, and you're going to find that you're not going to be as successful. Remember, this is on the individual alcoholic, regardless of whether or not they are seeking help or not. If it's got to be their decision. They have to do the work, and they're the ones that have to search out and seek out their higher power and attain that ability to actually dig deep, find that inner strength, and recover. Certainly you want to be supportive, but that's different than trying to reform. So just the idea that you're going to change somebody is always met with defeat. And this is certainly going to be one of those situations, especially given the fact that it is an alcoholic that we're talking about. Rob?
Yeah, beautiful. We know these suggestions are sometimes difficult to follow, but you will save many a heartbreak if you can succeed in observing them. Your husband may come to appreciate your reasonableness and patience. This may lay the groundwork for a friendly talk about his alcoholic problem. Try to have him bring up the subject himself. Be sure you are not critical during such a discussion. Attempt instead to put yourself in his place. Let him see that you want to be helpful rather than critical.
And this brings up those points that I have made in the past, the 3 threes that I talk about, which is the focus on the customer or focus on the alcoholic. So make sure you're focused on this person and not yourself. Earn the right to advance. And in doing so, you're going to, in an effort to do that, you're going to persuade through involvement. So if you have them involved in the conversation and they're engaged, you are actually doing a form of persuasion, talking through the issues that you've got, the challenges that you're facing in both of you, is always going to be helpful. So once you've done that, you get them involved in the discussion, then you've earned that right to advance to the next topic, the next phase of their recovery, etc. And again, I'm talking in terms of being supportive of them in helping them achieve their goal of breaking this alcoholism. So this is not going to be good if you start pointing fingers, start making demands, if you start putting ultimatums on the person. That always is going to be met with resistance and defensiveness. So we're really talking about this where you stay focused on them, not on yourself. You persuade them through involvement, get them engaged in the conversation, and get them kind of coming up with their own ideas about how they might go through some recovery. You may want to suggest the book. Obviously, the program is a good program. It's tried and true, and it's helped many an alcoholic. And then earn the right to advance, and that is basically helping them to find a sponsor, work on the steps, find a big book study, et cetera, et cetera. So that, and all of that, if you, remember not to be critical of the other person because they're struggling, especially if you've got them in a place where they do, in fact, have decided that they want to stop drinking. This is a very critical time, and it's not one for you to be critical of them as you're going through the process of getting them to a better place. Rob?
Yeah, you got to remember the book was published in 1939. Al-Anon was not brought out until I think 1950. I don't know the correct. We'll check with Bill later on that. But today we would send these wives to Al-Anon. We would say, there is a program you can go to get support, to help you through this. Here Bill is laying out all the things for the wife and what she can do. They say the passive resistance, let your husband do what he's going to do, basically, or the wife. We talk about husbands here, but this is to the spouse, and we have to remember that. When a discussion does arise, you might suggest you read this book, or at least a chapter on alcoholism. Tell him you've been worried, though perhaps needlessly. You think he ought to know the subject better, as everyone should have a clear understanding of the risk he takes if he drinks too much. Show him you have confidence in his power to stop or moderate. Say you do not want to be a wet blanket, that you only want him to take care of his health. Thus you may succeed in interesting him in alcoholism.
It's a perfect spot for just some suggestions on how to conduct the conversation. It's pretty clear here that you're essentially trying to be a facilitator not somebody that's placing demands or ultimatums on someone, but nonetheless, these are suggestions. It's a strong person to be in a capacity of actually having knowledge of alcoholism and not being the alcoholic, knowing about the book and its contents, and really being familiar with the program and the steps. That's quite the unique place to be for someone, but it isn't out of the question that somebody would be that way, especially in today's terms. But I would just say that this is an excellent paragraph to just discuss some of the ideas that you might put across to the alcoholic, and how to conduct a conversation. Rob?
Yeah, it says here, show him you have confidence in his power to stop or moderate. Well, we know that the real alcoholic is beyond human aid. He needs an entire psychic change in order to quit. I also checked on Al-Anon. Al-Anon was done 13 years after this chapter was written. It tells us on page 121. So I just wanted to throw that in. He probably has several alcoholics among his own acquaintances. You might suggest that you both take an interest in them. Drinkers like to help other drinkers. Your husband may be willing to talk to one of them.
Boy, can you just see the subtleness of just getting this person to be able to help another person, especially given the fact that it is a powerful tool in getting the person that's doing the helping to stop drinking. So it's just one of those ideas, again, just inserted here with regard to getting somebody to go and help another person. It's amazing at how much they want to stop drinking and or stay stopped at that point in time. But just wanted to say, and I'm sure it's obvious to everyone as it's jumping out at me, especially, helping another alcoholic is always going to be a great defense against taking another drink. Rob?
It is, Leo. All through the book, it's littered. And, Bill, our friend Bill from New Jersey, always mentions that how often step 12 is mentioned in the book, subtly. When Bill was depressed and, wasn't sure whether to go into the bar or what to do, he went to help another alcoholic. Why? Because it got him out of his own head. Instead of thinking about me, he starts thinking about other people. It takes us out of ourselves. Okay, we stop getting the pour me another drink. We help somebody else. Okay, step 12, all through this book, it's littered. Hey, when you're depressed, when you're not feeling well, when you're so inside your own head, you don't know which way to turn, go help somebody else. Pick up the phone, call another alcoholic. How are you doing today? It makes such a difference in our lives. So remember, help somebody else. Drinkers like to help other drinkers. Why do we like to help other drinkers? Because we stop thinking about ourselves. The noise in our head goes off. It quiets our nerves, our anxiety, and all the other negative emotions that we have. If this kind of approach does not catch your husband's interest, it may be best to drop the subject. But after a friendly talk, your husband will usually revive the topic himself. This may take patient waiting, but it will be worth it. Meanwhile, you might try to help the wife of another serious drinker. If you act upon these principles, your husband may stop or moderate.
A couple of things here. One is that if you're a spouse that's actually being active in trying to get your spouse to stop drinking, and then you feel compelled, and this is a good thing, but compelled to help another person's spouse with their alcoholic, that's quite the person. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I would say that right now and today, I would call it probably a unicorn out there that just wants to be helpful to anybody and everybody. I applaud them, and they should be recognized for trying as hard as they are. And being patient and waiting for your own spouse to kind of come to that same conclusion, to come back to the table and talk. That's that. Again, I'm just recognizing here that they are describing an incredibly strong person, but really one that would be, very desirable to have in a relationship. I know that my own spouse has been incredibly supportive to the point that they actually stopped drinking. And she hardly has taken a drink in the last couple of years. It's just amazing to me that she was able to just stop on behalf of my effort to also stop drinking. And however, I don't know that she necessarily reaches out to other people to help them. But just having her on board and being supportive in the manner in which she is quite nice. So thought here is spouse, again, that's got some knowledge, education on the program. They ease it in front of you as the alcoholic. You know, take it in some manner or fashion. You leave the table under good terms. We're assuming at this point, which is nice. And then at some point in time, the alcoholic comes back. And at that point, you've really got an interested member that wants to really talk about stopping their drinking. And it's a really good time to open up the book and talk about alcoholism, talk about the steps, talk about the program. You know, what did Bill go through? What's the doctor's opinion, et cetera, et cetera. Really, really good time to do that. And find that you aren't being demanding and putting this kind of pressure on the alcoholic. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people resist it so much, is that they feel like they're being told what to do. They're being made to do something. The absence of that is incredible when it comes to getting somebody to be interested in what you're doing. It just is. Rob?
Yeah. Now we're going to go into the next section, or the next paragraph, and it's going to talk about the number 2 drinker. Now I posted in the chat earlier what the different types are. I'm going to repost it just so that it brings back to top of mind. You know, type 2 is a lack of control, because as I say, they're going to mention a number 2. We went through it last week, but we don't always remember. Well, what's a number 2? I don't remember. I've just put it in the chat so we can keep on top of this. Suppose, however, that your husband fits the description of number 2, lack of control. The same principles which apply to husband number 1 should be practiced. But after his next binge, ask him if he would really like to get over drinking for good. Do not ask that he do it for you or anyone else. Just would he like to?
Right. And that's really the important thing here. Stay focused on the alcoholic and not on yourself. Okay. So that's really the high point that we want to make out of this paragraph, is that just stay focused on the alcoholic. Rob?
Yeah, which makes me go to page 34 for a second. Okay. Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it. The utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. You know what? We want to give it up, but we don't know. You know, we think it's self-will. You know, oh, I can do it. I can do it. But if we are, you know, a real alcoholic, we're beyond human aid, and we can't do it. And that is the baffling part. That's the part that drives us crazy, is because all these other things in our lives we're able to give up. I was able to give up smoking. Not a problem. I just decided, you know, that I didn't want to smoke anymore. Just threw the package away, got on with my life. When it came to alcohol, you know, I wanted to give it up. You know, I'm not going to drink today. Not going to drink today. You know, so, but you know what? The next day I would reward myself because I did so well. You know, the utter inability to leave it alone, no matter the necessity or the wish, drives you crazy. Because why, with all the other things in my life, I'm able to control and enjoy these things, but with alcohol, I couldn't. And it, you know, I couldn't understand why. And it took me a long time to figure out and to learn. And it wasn't until I got into the big book that it told me, you know what? It's a malady of the mind. You know, that, you know, it's going to make me take the first drink. And that's the melody's job. Make me take the first drink, because technology kicks in and I'm off to the races. The chances are he would. Show him your copy of this book and tell him what you have found out about alcoholism. Show him that alcoholics, the writers of this book, understand. Tell him some of the interesting stories you have read. If you think he will be shy of a spiritual remedy, ask him to look at the chapter on alcoholism. Then perhaps he will be interested enough to continue.
Yep, we just kind of mentioned that, so we'll just keep going, Rob.
You got it. If he is enthusiastic, your cooperation will mean a great deal. If he is lukewarm or thinks he is not an alcoholic, we suggest you leave him alone. Avoid urging him to follow our program. The seed has been planted in his mind. He knows that thousands of men, much like himself, have recovered. But don't remind him of this after he has been drinking, for he may be angry. Sooner or later, you are likely to find him reading the book once more. Wait until repeated stumbling convinces him he must act, for the more you hurry him, the longer his recovery may be delayed.
Yeah, it's basically human nature. You push somebody, they're liable to resist. If they resist, the more you push, the more they resist. The more they resist, the longer it's going to take. It's pretty simple as far as that's concerned. But the idea here is just basically make some subtle suggestions, catch him at the or her at the end of a debacle where they're basically thinking to themselves, I don't want to do this ever again. I don't like the way I feel. Please take this away so that I can feel better, et cetera, et cetera. I'll do anything to not feel this way again. You know, it's just one of those areas or one of those time frames where they're at least vulnerable enough that they might be interested in listening. And it may only be a planting of the seed. So remember that that's maybe all you get is just the awareness that there is a program, that it does work, and that there is chapters, for example, on alcoholism. If for no other reason you get them educated on what being an alcoholic is, you've made some progress. Rob?
Yeah, now this brings me back to page 40 and our friend Fred. One day we were told that Fred was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive. Okay, let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me. He thought he could do it by himself, and we find out that we can't. And this happens. That's why it says wait until repeated stumblings, and then the person will realize they can't do it on their own, no matter how hard they try. Then they're going to need your help. If you have a number 3 husband, okay, you may be in luck. Being certain he wants to stop, you can go to him with this volume as joyfully as though you had struck oil. He may not share your enthusiasm, but he is practically sure to read the book and may go for the program at once. If he does not, you will probably not have to wait long. Again, you should not crowd him. Let him decide for himself. Cheerfully see him through more sprees. Talk about his condition or this book only when he raises the issue. In some cases, it may be better to let someone outside the family present the book. They can urge action without arousing hostility. If your husband is otherwise a normal individual, your chances are good at this stage.
Yeah. The idea here is to relax. Basically, you've got a person that's got, they're at the end. They want to stop drinking, and it made it clear that that's what they want. And all you need to do is be there to be supportive and help them to see what this program is all about, what alcoholism is all about, what other, what the whole idea of the steps are, and then walking through those steps and that type of thing. It's really all you have to do is just be that supportive person that is basically helping to walk them along that path, and not having to push, not having to convince. You just don't have to do all of that work. So just relax. Rob?
Yeah, it says cheerfully. I love it. Cheerfully see him through more sprees. Well, yeah, if it was only that easy, right? We want to see help for this person. Remember the 2 wives, 2 spouses, 2 sponsees. That's what this chapter is all about, because we can use it for sponsees too. Remember Jim, 6 times he was in and out of the treatment center, and each time they worked with him. We don't give up on our sponsees. We keep working with them. Okay. Because sometimes they just don't understand what they're suffering from. They don't understand it's an illness. They don't understand about the allergy. They don't understand about the malady that centers in their mind. You know, sometimes they don't understand. And we work with them. We don't give up on people. Okay. Some people don't want to work with us. That's fine. That's their choice. But we don't give up on people. Okay. So cheerfully see them through more sprees. As I say, I love how it's worded, but you know what? Each time we are disappointed. The wife's got to be disappointed because Bill wrote down in his family Bible that he was through with drinking for good, but again, he was drinking in a short time. How disappointed Lois must have been. She thought he meant it for sure this time. So it's disappointing for the wives, for the sponsors too, when they see their sponsee go through something like this. But we're there for them to help them through it. You would suppose that men in the fourth classification would be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Everybody had given them up. Defeat seemed certain. Yet often such men had spectacular and powerful recoveries.
Yeah, sometimes we're at our best when we're at our worst, meaning that we have the opportunity to really do something good. Maybe we are finally at our most bottom point and we're ready to start climbing out of that hole. It really does depend on the individual. I mean, at this point in time, yep, there are some people that are just that far gone and it's hopeless. But that doesn't mean that you would give up on them. Doesn't mean you wouldn't stop working with them. So the idea here is that just because they seem to be at the point in time where they just are, you just don't seem to be able to make any headway with them. Just being there and being supportive and trying to get them to this book, to this program, to others that are recovering and or are recovered is a good thing. So just know that the type 4 person, they've got medical problems. There's a lot of bad stuff. We've got plenty of examples in the here and now of people that were at their rock bottom and were having medical problems from their drinking, et cetera, and they recovered. And so it is possible to dig out from that hole and find that inner strength, be partners with that higher power and be able to pull it out. Rob?
Remember, as we get further in, the desperation of the person who is drinking wants to quit. They become desperate. Type 1, heavy drinker. They can give it up if given sufficient reason. Number 2, lack of control. Well, they're not sure whether they can control and enjoy their drinking. So they think they can still do it themselves. Type 3 wants to stop, but realizes they can't. And then type 4, medical problems. Things start to get a little more serious. In and out of treatment centers. They want to give it up. Okay. Because let's be honest, they don't mention it in the book, but type 5, it's dead. So it's the amount of desperation that we come to. We're on page 114 now, everybody, right at the top. There are exceptions. Some men have been so impaired by alcohol that they cannot stop. Sometimes there are cases where alcoholism is complicated by other disorders. A good doctor or psychiatrist can tell you whether these complications are serious. In any event, try to have your husband read this book. His reaction may be one of enthusiasm. If he is already committed to an institution, but can convince you and your doctor that he means business, give him a chance to try our method, unless the doctor thinks his mental condition too abnormal or dangerous. We make this recommendation with some confidence. For years, we have been working with alcoholics committed to institutions. Since this book was first published, AA has released thousands of alcoholics from asylums and hospitals of every kind. The majority have never returned. The power of God goes deep.
It's pretty self-explanatory here. Bill himself was at one of these places and in one of these stages when he finally did come out of it and recovered. So I would just use this as the fact that there are people that are so far gone that you just think are hopeless, but don't give up, because it might be at the point in time where they are ready and finally ready to recover. So, Rob?
Yeah, and don't forget, the times have changed quite a bit. In 1939, these people were given sedatives, et cetera, in order to try to wean them off. And you start drinking with sedatives and different drugs, and off to the races you go. You just get a little twisted. Today we have detox, we have treatment centers. Some of them can be difficult to get into, but we can still get them there. People have to be weaned off alcohol. If a real alcoholic can't just stop without could go into delirium tremens, etc., and they could die. So we get them in the detox center. And in 1939, Bill would bring people into his home and detox them at home. Today, we don't have to do that. So please keep that in mind. And also, many people that come into our fellowship suffer from other problems, more than just alcohol. Okay? So please keep that in mind. Some people need other medical care. They need psychiatrists, et cetera, in order to help them out. You may have the reverse situation on your hands. Perhaps you have a husband who is at large, but who should be committed. Some men cannot or will not get over alcoholism. When they become too dangerous, we think the kind thing is to lock them up. But of course, a good doctor should always be consulted. The wives and children of such men suffer horribly, but not more than the men themselves.
Yeah, don't forget about those that are going through this. It is a bad situation, and at this point in time, we are at least they're at least acknowledging by saying that there are people that are not going to be that able to be saved at this point in time, and that they should find some level of being committed and cared for, so that they aren't a danger to others. Pretty self-explanatory here, Bob.
Yeah. But sometimes you must start life anew. We know women who have done it. If such women adopt a spiritual way of life, their road will be smoother.
Keep going.
Okay. If your husband is a drinker, you probably worry over what other people are thinking, and you hate to meet your friends. You draw more and more into yourself, and you think everyone is talking about conditions at your home. You avoid the subject of drinking, even with your own parents. You do not know what to tell the children. When your husband is bad, you become a trembling recluse, wishing the telephone had never been invented.
Yeah, certainly so. People do like to talk about others, and this is certainly one of those areas where people like to really focus on. The fact is, you probably worry over what other people are thinking. That's hard not to do. You feel like that everybody's focused on you, and in some cases they might be, but for the most part, we have in society become very familiar with the problem drinker, the excessive drinker, etc. We also have gotten very comfortable with people that are recovering and have recovered. And I know this to be true because you see it now in a lot of TV shows and movies where one of the characters is a recovering alcoholic of some kind, or recovering addict, that type of thing. And it's part of their persona that they exhibit when they're playing the character that they're playing. So I know that this is getting more mainstream, but what I'm trying to get to here is that you should try your best not to worry about what other people think. Everybody has somebody that they know that is a problem drinker, or has embarrassed themselves and or others in a situation, etc. sometime in life, if not yourself, someone else. Try not to withdraw. It's a natural thing to do. You certainly don't want to put others into a situation where there's going to be some embarrassment, but just try your best to be strong and try to stay as socially connected as you possibly can. Rob?
We find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. While you need not discuss your husband at length, you can quietly let your friends know the nature shirtless, but you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband.
And again, most people are pretty accepting of this idea nowadays, of somebody that's a recovering alcoholic, or is that it's a suffering alcoholic at this point. So it's something that most people will accept. And the right kind of friends, the right kind of family is going to accept the idea readily, and they're not going to pass judgment, and they're not going to criticize. So I would just say that that's kind of one of those areas where you should be comfortable in talking about it. It is an illness. The more we talk about it as such, the more accepted it's going to be, and the easier it is for the alcoholic to recover, because the stigma isn't going to be there quite as much. Rob?
When you have carefully explained to such people that he is a sick person, you will have created a new atmosphere. Barriers which have sprung up between you and your friends will disappear with the growth of sympathetic understanding. You will no longer be self-conscious or feel that you must apologize as though your husband were a weak character. It may be anything but that. Your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially.
It'll also do wonders for the alcoholic. I mean, the fact that most people are going to be in a supportive role as opposed to a critical role, I think, is important enough that you should you realize that as well. So if we stay focused on the alcoholic and not on ourselves so much, then I think that you're going to find that there's going to be a lot more receptiveness. At the same time, it does say this, and I do believe this: your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially. Yeah, as soon as everybody's in a position where it's kind of like that weight being lifted off your shoulders. If you get it out in the open, it's sitting there, and people can acknowledge it and deal with it. All of a sudden it's not a problem anymore. So just by that, again, the human condition, as long as we're at being upfront, open and honest about something, the better we feel about it. Rob?
Yeah, later on, we're going to get it when we get into the family afterwards. We're going to find out that what happened is that the alcoholic has sort of not taken part in family functions anymore. They just, if you want to drink, fine. We're going out. I'm taking the kids with me. We're going to this birthday party. We're going to this social event, whatever it is. And we'll come later on to, when father does get sober, the challenges that it comes in the family. But you know what? Right now, get out there, people. Enjoy yourself. The same principle applies in dealing with the children. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it is best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energy to promote a better understanding all around. Then that terrible tension, which grips the home of every problem drinker, will be lessened.
Sure. And the idea here is to just stay positive, stay supportive, take a neutral position on things, especially when there's conflict between the alcoholic and the children. As long as there's not a need for protection, and that is an important factor here, as long as there's not a need for that, then just taking a neutral position on things should actually help to lessen the severity of the interaction that might be going on, and that certainly is true. Rob?
Yeah, and this is where, we talked about friends, how to deal with friends, how to deal with children. Now we're going to talk about how to deal with the employer. Frequently, you have felt obliged to tell your husband's employer and his friends that he was sick, when, as a matter of fact, he was tight. Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can. Whenever possible, let your husband explain. Your desire to protect him should not cause you to lie to people when they have a right to know where he is and what he is doing. Discuss this with him when he is sober and in good spirits. Ask him what you should do if he places you in such a position again, but be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so.
Okay, this is one of those areas where we want to admit that this person is a sick person. They have a disease. It's called alcoholism. If somebody is tight, and we'll use that word, in fact, they're impaired, and being impaired means that they're not fully well. And so I'm not so sure that I would necessarily agree with not saying that the person is sick. because obviously at that point, I feel like that both psychologically and physically, that a person that's impaired is actually in a sick condition, because and even though they've done it to themselves. So I would say that it is important to let an employer know what's going on. A lot of times you're going to find that they're very supportive and will be also very helpful in helping the person to find some level of care and or medical attention. But nonetheless, I don't believe in having to lie for somebody. That's not the intent, nor should it be. And I think that the idea here, though, is just to extend the idea of this illness, this disease, to a person that is actually impaired, is exhibiting the symptoms of this illness and this disease. Rob?
Yeah, and this is good advice for the new sponsee who goes out, but be careful not to be resentful about the last time you did so. Okay, that's just what we do, unfortunately, and so don't be resentful. There's another paralyzing fear. You may be afraid your husband will lose his position. You are thinking of the disgrace and hard times which will befall you and the children. This experience may come to you, or you may already have had it several times. Should it happen again, regard it in a different light. Maybe it will prove a blessing. You may convince your husband he wants to stop drinking forever. Now you know that he can stop if he will. Time after time, this apparent calamity has been a boon to us, for it opened up a path which led to the discovery of God.
Sure. And the idea really is you're finding somebody that might lose something. Remember our fears that we talked about. This is one of those where we might lose something that we have. And the fact that you might lose something as being a job may be enough of a motivator to get you to at least start thinking about ways that you could stop drinking, and the fact that you want to stop drinking. So so this whole thing should be discussed. It should be out in the open. It's something that could be a motivator. And a lot of times an alcoholic's going to say, the last thing I want to do is to put my entire family in jeopardy by losing my job, losing my income, not being able to pay bills, and then turning around and finding that we start to suffer in that regard. So it should be talked about. It should be brought out in the open. It shouldn't be hidden. It shouldn't be, hidden. It should be something that the alcoholic should really care about. And a lot of times, most of the times, I want to believe that they will. I think it is an opportunity. I think it's a real opportunity, and it should be one that you converse over openly. Rob?
Yeah, then this takes me to page 25. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension. There is a solution. We have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. We wise found that, like everybody else, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go to make up the self-centered person, and we were not above selfishness or dishonesty. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too.
It just goes without saying that, you can find some success in your alcoholism and fighting the urge to drink using spiritual principles. Why not extend that to the rest of your life? There is a lot of good. It turns around and it reinforces what you're doing from an alcoholic standpoint. And as for the individuals in the family, obviously this book has been recommended to those that are non-alcoholics as well, as being a way to live your life in the spiritual sense and having it be a much more fulfilling one. Rob?
Yeah. The alcoholic sets the example. That's what I have written beside this. At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought, on the whole, we were pretty women, capable of being nicer if our husbands stopped drinking. But it was a silly idea that we were too good to need God. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing will be so helpful to your husband as to radically change attitude towards him, which God will show you how to have. Go along with your husband if you possibly can.
Yeah, and certainly we've been talking about a person that's knowledgeable of the program ahead of time. They know about the book, they know about alcoholism, they've been in a position to be positive and suggestive and being supportive of the alcoholic. So why not then take the next step and take this book and internalize it for yourself? It's really a good idea. It's a sound idea, and it really does make sense. Rob?
If you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are, of course, going to be very happy. But all problems will not be solved at once. Seed has started to sprout in a new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be.
Sure, it's not going to be a perfect utopian, kumbaya kind of a life. It's going to be, there are going to be still problems, just because this doesn't mean that is going to go away. So just be prepared for that. And I think that that's really trying to just say that, hey, let's be realistic here. It does solve the drink problem for sure. It does make other issues and matters even, less difficult, but it doesn't actually make them go away completely. So we're going to understand that there are going to be ups and downs, and life is life, and the trials and tribulations, the things that we don't have control of, are still going to be there, and we're going to have to deal with them. But dealing with them in a spiritual manner is going to actually make, at least it make the dealing with it better, and more likely the outcome is going to be better as well. Right?
Yeah, Leo, this takes me to page 15 of Bill's story. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. It was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. I was not too well at the time and was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Step 12 all over again. The thing is that life is not full of roses. For every rose there's thorns, and sometimes we get the thorns instead of the rose. So when these things crop up, go and help somebody else. Okay, we can sit there and we can feel sorry for ourselves, or we can just go out and help somebody else and get out of ourselves. Fix our problems, and it also will reinforce what we need to do in order to stay sober ourselves. So please keep that in mind. The faith and sincerity of both you and your husband will be put to the test. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. Instead, you will capitalize them. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome.
We're talking a little bit about step 11 here in regards to some of the things that you're going to be doing and the way that you're going to be living your life. Looking at your day and kind of reflecting on some of the things that happened. What is it you did right? What is it you did wrong? How can you capitalize on both? If I did this right and I want to continue to do that, if I did this wrong, I want to try and correct something. And what is that I need to correct? And then next morning, when you meditate on how your day is going to unfold, you can then take and remember the things from the day prior and try to make things better. Our own Jason has got a really good technique of writing things down and taking some inventory in the evening and then reflecting on it the next day and reminding himself of the things that he wants to do, and has seen some fairly remarkable results from it. And so it's just a technique and an idea that will, benefit you. And the idea is you just don't want to get drugged down by the problems. You want to actually have those problems, obviously, that it's just the way you deal with them and the way that you have built up some resistance to being drugged down by them, and find yourself in a much better place. Rob?
So true. Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentment. Your husband will sometimes be unreasonable. You will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your husband. Often you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. We do not mean that you have to agree with your husband whenever there is an honest difference of opinion. Just be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit.
Yeah, it's just some ideas here, some suggestions on how to handle some of the situations that you're going to face that are going to be negative in your life. Obviously, the more positive you can be, the more forthright with regard to just basically saying, hey, this is the way things are. We're going to deal with it in a positive manner, not doing it from a negative standpoint, not finger pointing, not creating any of these resentments, because the bottom line is you just don't want to develop those resentments. It really is a problem, and can, in fact, push somebody back to drinking. Rob, let's go ahead and bring Bill in if you want.
Sounds like a great idea. You're muted, Bill. Oh, there you go.
Hi, this is Bill. I'm alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good job here today. This here chapter is basically about how to work with an alcoholic. What Bill's doing, he's giving some instructions or some directions or suggestions on how to work with somebody that's an alcoholic. This is not specifically about it shouldn't be called to wives. It should be called to the sane person dealing with the insane person. That's basically what this is about. This is how to deal with an alcoholic. And we can use all of the information that's in here when we're sponsoring somebody. He says cheerfully see them through their sprees. That doesn't mean you're supposed to be happy about a person going out and drinking. But when somebody comes back into a meeting, we're not supposed to be mean and nasty to them. We're supposed to welcome them back, say, welcome back. We're glad you're here. Sit down, relax, listen, have some coffee and donuts, whatever. We're supposed to be friendly and cheerful to people when they try to come back. We're not supposed to be mean and start arguing with them. And he tells us in here all the time, arguing with an alcoholic is a waste of time. If you argue with somebody that's still drinking, I don't know what anybody else is going to do. I think Leo mentioned it. Somebody said that as soon as we're told not to do something, we'll do it out of spite. That is 100% exactly the alcoholic mindset. I know from my experience, anytime I was told I'm not allowed to do something, I would do it 10 times. That's just the way we are. And that's the point Bill's trying to get across here. It's a waste of time to argue with an alcoholic over their drinking. Basically, what we have to do is try to be friendly with it. And if you do something in a resentful attitude, that's most likely going to set the alcoholic off. And he mentions resentments in here. This last paragraph that we read, he has resentment in there like 3 different times. He's telling us not to get resentful when somebody else drinks. A smart person knows how to fix a resentment, and a wise person knows how to avoid a resentment. And it's better to avoid it than have to fix it. Because when it comes to an alcoholic, if the person working with the alcoholic gets a resentment, the alcoholic's going to get a resentment, and then the alcoholic's going to go back out and drink. And then the first person's going to get another resentment because they went out and drank, and it's just going to keep snowballing. Sometimes you just have to, grin and bear it and turn the other cheek or walk away or whatever. And that's the point Bill's trying to get across here. I think he's talking from his own experience of what he went through with his wife. Lois probably screamed and yelled at him to stop drinking. And every time she did, what did he do? He went back out and drank again. So that kind of stuff doesn't work with us. Alcoholics have to be treated a little bit different than normal people. And I think that's the point he's trying to get across to us here. All right, thanks a lot for letting me share. That's all I got. Good job today, guys.
Thanks very much, Bill. Appreciate you. You're muted, Leo.
Sorry about that, folks. Let's go ahead and close out with the serenity prayer.
That's perfect. Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Excellent.